Today we're going to be discussing dinim that are negayah to Erev Tisha B'Av Shechal b'Shabbos. And I'm sure you heard about it, but hopefully we'll have what to be meisif. First, we have to understand what does this mean that Erev Tisha B'Av is nitcha, and is there really a shvur shechal by and all the halachas pertaining that, which are going to be very negayah halacha. So now, the klad that the achronim klad, the Ksav Sofer, and the Tshuvas Avnei is when Tisha B'Av Shechal b'Shabbos, and it's nitcha to Yom Risha. So it's nitcha, we push it off to Sunday. Is that a din tashlumin, which means that Chazal misakin that the iked din is to fast on Asiri. Das heißt, would they oiker the din of Tisha B'Av, which means literally Tes B'Av, and put it to Yom Yud B'Av, or really it's Tes B'Av that you're mechuyev to do all the dinei tainis? Just as a din tashlumin of Yud B'Av, because it can't be done on Tes B'Av. So let's be clear again. Is the pshat that really the din is that Tisha B'Av, which is this year on Shabbos, is Chal Tisha B'Av, just we can't do the minhagim of Tisha B'Av and we'll do it on Yom Rishon, Yom Yud La'av, or the Chazal came and they saw that since the Shabbos is going to be Tisha B'Av, they will oiker the day of Tisha B'Av completely, and they put the day of Tisha B'Av this year on Yom Yud. Now, al pi pashtus, you would say that it's a din tashlumin. Tisha B'Av is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is Tes B'Av. And why would you say that we go ahead and we push it off to a day and oiker the day of Tisha B'Av? Pashtus, it's a day of Tisha B'Av. And there's din tashlumin of Yom Yud. That's what will be with the pashtus. But the achronim, and we'll see later, there's some Rishonim Amavur like that, have a very strong tzad to say that they will oiker completely the day of Tisha B'Av. And today, this year, we used to calling it Tisha B'Av. We don't know what the meaning is. Tisha B'Av means the 9th of Av is going to be Yud B'Av. That is all the dinim that normally are upon us on Tisha B'Av are going to be Yom Yud B'Av. And it's not a din of tashlum. Where does it make an afkamin? The pashtan afkamina would be in machlekes in the Rishonim, the Rashba and the Rosh. The Rashba and Shuvas Chelik Aleph Siman Tov Kuf Chav says that he was asked about Tashmish Hamita on the day of Tisha B'Av Shechal b'Shabbos, Friday night. So he says, is that like Avelis Ba'amud that Dvarim Shebetzina Noyik? Do we say that Dvarim Shebetzina by Avelis is Aser? So too over here, Dvarim Shebetzina on Shabbos will be Aser because it's for Tisha B'Av? Or we say, no, there's no Dvarim Shel Avelis Noyik B'chlal. Zok the Rashba, that they will oiker it completely, and there's no dinei avelis noyeg b'Shabbos, even dvarim shebetzina. So it's very clear from the Shuvas Rashba that this year there's no dinim that apply on Shabbos. Everything is pushed off to Sunday, and whatever a normal year is Tisha B'Av, this year applies on Sunday. That is very clear in the Rashba. Shechanach paskas like that in Siman Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Yotes for Svardim. We're not knowing any dinim because this year's Shabbos is not Tisha B'Av. It's not just that it's tashlumin, they were oiked, the Chazal were oiked completely, and there's no dinei Tisha B'Av at all. The Rosh, on the other hand, in Tainus, Perek Dalet Siman Lamed Beis, he brings from Rishonim, Ben Emei, and others that no Tisha B'Av Shechal b'Shabbos. It's also to do Tashmish Hamita on Friday nights. Why? Because there are Dinei Avelis, and before Hesi you can't do because it's for Shabbos. But Dvarim Shebetzina, we're not like all Dinei Avelis. If someone knows an Aval on Shabbos, he's also in Dvarim Shebetzina. So therefore, Zok the Rosh, that it's also to go ahead and be Naig Dvarim Shebetzina on Shabbos because as a Dinei Avelis. Zok the Avnei Pashut, that this machlekes rishonim depends on this klal, what we just said, that the Rashba is going to learn that they were oikered completely, and that's why it's mutar dvarim shebetzina, and the Rosh or the Imei are going to learn that it's not that they were oikered completely, it's more the fact that it's a day of Tisha B'Av, just the anhagis of Tisha B'Av weren't really noyig, it's a day of Avelis, but the minhagim before Hesya we pushed off to Sunday. So therefore, dvarim shebetzina tashmish hamita would be usher on Friday night, late the rush, and that's what the Ramal Paskins, which we'll get to later on. Another big nafkamina is all the halachas pertaining the week of Shavuot Shechalbot. We know with Bnei Ashkenaz, but Bnei Sfard, they are not noyig to any halachas from Rosh Chodesh and on. By them, all the halachas are only from Shavuot Shechalbot. All the Yisurim are Shavuot Shechalbot, not negaya the halachas of from Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, it'll come out that this year, that Shavuot Shechalbot, Tisha B'Av is Tes B'Av rather is on Shabbos. So that we say from last week Sunday, from this past Sunday, it's Shavuot Shechalbot, and you'll have these Surim, which we'll see later what the person is not allowed to do on Shavuot Shechalbot. Or no, this year Shavuot Shechalbot is on next week Sunday, Tisha B'Av, because there's no Shavuot Shechalbot, because there's no Tisha B'Av that was Chalan this week. Tisha B'Av is Sunday, not Shabbos. If Tisha B'Av will be Shabbos, then the week previous, which is this week that we're in now, that will be all these Surim of Shavuot Shechalbot. But if it's Tisha B'Av, Shechalbot Shabbos is going to be Sunday, they will occur it completely from Shabbos, and the day of Tisha B'Av is Sunday, Yud B'Av. So therefore, this whole week would have all the Teirim that are Negeya to where the halachas are relevant, which we're going to speak about in a moment. Now, where is it Negeya to say these halachas Shavuot Shechalbot? Really, like we said, it's mostly Negeya the Sfadim, because the Sfadim hold, the Mechaber brings down, Tavkuf Nandalad Sif Dalad. He says that when it's Negeya, all the halachas Negeya pertaining the week of Shavuot Shechalbot. So he says Sfadim are only makbid on the week of Shavuot Shechalbot. That means that the week that Tisha B'Av falls out in the middle of that week or the end of that week, then the days before that, prior to that, from Shabbos and on, have these Surya Dina Avelis. But the week before that, even though it's after Rosh Chodesh Av, there won't be any Dina Avelis to it. So therefore, the Sfadim are much more kuladik on the sense that if this Tisha B'Av Shechal B'Shabbos is really Sunday, so therefore this year they wouldn't have any Dina Avelis the whole week. This whole week that we're in, they would not have any Dina Avelis. So the Shulchan Aruch brings the machlokes and the Rishonim about this. Is this year Tisha B'Av Shavuot Shechalbot and the Tisha B'Av Shechal B'Shabbos, is this year going to be a din of Shavuot Shechalbot? Stami says it's not Noyeg Shavuot Shechalbot. Then he brings Yesh Aymin the Noyeg Shavuot Shechalbot. Zogt al Yirav Sivkat Mchavches Va'ikil Halacha Kedas HaPeskim Shebetes B'Av Nitche and Ein Din Shavuot Shechalbot B'Shavuot Shalafanav. This year the Yirav says, and as we know, we spoke about many times when the Mechaber brings Stam V'ach Kach Yesh, we go with the Stam, and the Stam day is that it's not Negeya Dinim of Shavuot Shechalbot. So for the Sfadim, most of the Dinah Avelis do not apply this week at all. Now, what do we do for the Bnei Ashkenaz? Where do we give them a kula? So the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tov Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Yudalid writes, Asa l'gdolim l'sape l'ktanim u'lechabes ksusim b'shabbos shachal Tisha B'Av li'ez b'seich. It's also for adults to wash clothing of children on the week of Shavuot Shechalbot. The Rama says, Miu, the Godim shemalafim behem aktanim ligamri, shemaitzim behem rei, umashtina behem hani vadai mishashari, v'afil big day shaktanim noyagim lahakal. The Rama says that the minig lahakal is to wash clothing of ktanim, even if they're not maitzim rei. Now, we don't know exactly what age this is. It's a machlekes in the Paiskim, if it's till 6 years old or a little bit older than that. But any child that's still 6 years old, zakter ma mutter lechabes is begadov, even mutter lechabes begadov, even clothing that are not going to go ahead and mitziyim b'amrei. So now, the Paiskim disagree. There's a machlokes in the minig Ashkenazim that this is a kibbutz washing clothing is noyeg from Rosh Chodesh Av. Some say that it's also for ktanim to even wash these clothing, which means that ktanim that are older than 6, let's say from 6 till bar mitzvah, it's also to wash their clothing from Chodesh Av. Some say that this is Dafka Shvur Shechalbai. But from Chodesh Av till Shvur Shechalbai, you're allowed to wash children's clothing even for Bnei Ashkenaz. The Mishabur and Sifkat and Pei Beis, again in Simon Tafkuf and Aleph, brings down this machlokes. He brings down HaRav that we are machmer, Bnei Ashkenaz are machmer to wash clothing from Chodesh. But he brings on the Chai Adam, the Letzerech Ktanim Ein Lahachme Af Lefim in Agenu. Even like our minig that we're makbet from Chodesh, Zok the Chai Adam, Letzerech Ktanim Ein Lahachme Ella B'Shabbos Zu. So he brings two days, and he's not machriya. He says he quotes the HaRav and he quotes the Chai Adam. So when the Mishabur is not machriya, we have to know what's the klal. Who do we pass on? That means like the Chai Adam will come out that this year any cotton, which means from 0 till 13, you're allowed like a tchila to wash his clothing because there's no shvur shechal. Masha'enke like the HaRav, it would be us. The Paiskim that this year, since it's a Issa D'Rabbanan, it's a Suffolk D'Rabbanan, any child till 13 years old, you're allowed like a tchila to wash his clothing this week. Because since we have a machlokes, and we started off saying that this year, Pashtus, we go with the first day of the Mechaber, that there's no Shvur Shechalbai. Normally it's not Negeya for Bnei Ashkenaz, but the Gabe washing clothing, it is Negeya. The Chai Adam says that the whole Issa is only on Shvur Shechalbai. Therefore, this year that there's no Shvur Shechalbai, again, we pass that there's no Shvur Shechalbai, we pass no Shvur Shechalbai. Therefore, in an Issa D'Rabbanan, you can be Mekel. Kibbutz is a D'Rabbanan. Therefore, children till 13 years old, that clothing could be washed. It's a Chiddush La'alacha, but that's what we paskin, that this year the children's clothing could be washed. And that's Pashut, that there's a makom to be Mekel Rechitza for Ktanim. Again, Ktanim does not mean Ktanim Shlei Yigir L'Chinuch. This is even Ktanim Shlei Yigir L'Chinuch, till 13 by a Zacha, till 12 by a Nekeva, that like a Tchila allowed to wash, because this is a Kavachomer. Kibbutz is more Me'ikar Adin, Rechitza is not so much Me'ikar Adin, so therefore it's more of a minig. So therefore, this year it's Nayig that you could be Reichitz Ketanim, could be Reichitz this week, because, like we said, there's no Shvur Shechabah. So too, the Mishabur says that Adam, the Mishabur is in Sifkat and Yud Beis and Tafkuf and Aleph, he quotes the HaRav, someone that only has one beged, you could be mated to be mechabes from Chodesh till Shvur Shechabah. So even a gadol that only has one pair of pants or whatever it is, he is allowed to wash his clothing this year, because the HaRav says that we have a heta on every year only unless it's Shvur Shechabah. But like we're saying, this year we have to be Mekel and Shvur Shechabah. So therefore, this week you would be allowed to go ahead and wash your clothing, wash your cotton's clothing, and a gadol if he only has one set of pants, one pair of pants, then he's allowed to go ahead and wash his pants, because the dinim of Shvur Shechabah do not really apply, since it's a suffix, and we pass can make our din, we pass like the first day in the Mechaber, therefore the chumras of Shvur Shechabah do not apply. Now, the Gabe Erev Shabbos coming up, the following Erev Shabbos. So we know that the whole Shvur Shechabah, and even on Shvur Shechabah, the 9 days, a person is not supposed to take a shower. But the covered Erev Shabbos, a person is allowed to go ahead and take a shower. We're noyig to do it a little less than, a little bit more, a little lukewarm, or not that hot as a regular Erev Shabbos, because it's fought in 9 days. So now the Pri Megadim writes that Chafifa Sarosh Bechamin B'Shabbos Chazoin V'Erev TISHA B'Av Acha Chatzois Tzorach Iyim B'Zeh. He says this year Erev TISHA B'Av Shechal B'Shabbos. So since Friday is Erev TISHA B'Av, it's Ches, it's really Erev TISHA B'Av. So he says after Chatzois, the Katchila you should not go ahead and take a good Chafifa Sarosh, scrubbing your hair, washing your hair with shampoo. This person should not do it after Chatzos. The Eved, after Chatzos is mutter. But like at Tchila, he says, you should not wash yourself, you should not do Chafifas HaRosh after Chatzos. Again, because it's different than every year, it's Erev Tisha B'Av, so therefore, since it's Yom Ches La'av, after Chatzos, you have to be Machmir. The Be'alacha quotes this, the Be'alacha in Siman Tuf Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Tazayin, the Be'maschel B'Chafifas, quotes this Pri Megadim, that like at Tchila, you should be Machmir to do it before Chatzos. Now, the question is, where does this halacha come from? That means forget what we're saying now that you're being oike, Chazal oike the din of Tisha B'Av, and they made it on Yom Yud. Yom Yud is the din of Tisha B'Av itself. But even without that, why should there be a difference between before Chatzos and after Chatzos? So Chaya, it's pashut that since there is a tzad, and maybe the Pri Megadim will even be going with that tzad, that Yom Tes, which is Shabbos, is really Tisha B'Av. It's just that we pushed it off to Yom Yud, but Yom Tes is really Tisha B'Av. So therefore we know that Tisha B'Av before Chatzos, we see some Yisurim, we see it's somewhat of learning. We'll get to that in Hashem. But there are already Chumras from Tisha B'Av, even the day before Yom Ches, after Chatzos. So therefore we're going to go ahead and deal with this Erev Shabbos like Tisha B'Av, which is really going to be on Shabbos. Just the Chazal were mashlim it on Sunday. So therefore, those dinim apply that on Friday afternoon after Chatzos, you should not be taking a shower. Fine. So that is going to be, if you hold like the Shittas, which is the second day in the Mechaber, like we said earlier, that Tisha B'Av Shachal B'Shabbos is really Tisha B'Av on Shabbos, just we're pushing off the dinim of it to Sunday. But it's really a day of Tisha B'Av. So then it makes sense that Yom Ches, there should be a Surim on Yom Ches after Chatzos. But the way we explained till now, basically that we go more like the day of the first day of the Mechaber, the stam of the Mechaber, that Yom Tisha B'Av this year is Yom Yud, which is Sunday. So Shabbos is Erev Tisha B'Av, not Friday. Friday is Erev Tisha B'Av. So therefore, Yom Ches should not be any dinim of Isser even after Chatzos. So therefore, the Shevet HaLevi and says that the minig is not like the Pri Megadim, and like at Tchila you could take a shower after Chatzos. And once there's a din like at Tchila you could take a shower after Chatzos, then maybe not only that, maybe you should take a shower after Chatzos. Why should you? Because you're supposed to take a shower Samach l'Shabbos as much as you can. You take a shower Thursday night, even though it's done for Shabbos, but especially today, it's hot outside, you'll sweat, so then it's forgotten about the time Shabbos comes, that shower is long forgotten. So therefore, fakat, maybe it's more of an Indian to go ahead and take a shower after Chatzos. And therefore, the Shevet HaLevi says that the minig is taken not like the Pri Megadim, and a person is allowed, like a Tchila, to go ahead and take a shower after Chatzos. The way we're explaining it, it's pashut, because we hold Me'ikar Adin, there's no Shua Shachal, and Me'ikar Adin, Tisha B'Av this year is on Sunday. So since it's on Sunday, the Erev Tisha B'Av is on Shabbos and not on Friday, and therefore we don't get a din of after Chatzos on Friday to start giving you a sur. The Asher Ba'al Leib Steinman and Chaim Kanievsky, if Yeshivas or whoever has a Seder Kavua on Friday and he learns till after Chatzos, should he go ahead and be noyeg like the Pri Megadim to take a shower before Chatzos? And they both answer that it's pashut that he should not stop his learning and say the kavua, and it's not, he should not go ahead and he's not obligated to go ahead and take a shower before Chatzos because of this Pri Megadim. And even if someone knows like the Pri Megadim, but a person shouldn't go ahead and be mafsig his regular schedule. Now, the Mishnah Berurah quotes the Mechreinim in Siman Kuf Nun Aleph Sifkat and Chav. The covered Shabbos, Yon Shachal Tisha B'Av B'Shabbos, Shori B'Ev Shabbos, Litter Tzipanayim, you can cut your nails. And that's what most Paiskim Paskin. The Mekar Chaim says, no, do not cut it on Erev Tisha B'Av Shachal B'Shabbos. So again, like we're saying, it'll all depend on this. You said this the Gemachloikis, if Friday is a din of Erev Tisha B'Av, or Friday is just the Erev Tes B'Av, but not Erev Tisha B'Av. Erev Tisha B'Av, as we would call it, that's Shabbos. because that's Erev Yud this year, and that's Friday is not considered Erev Tisha B'Av. So therefore, again, we paskin Mikra Adin like the day that Sunday is Tisha B'Av. Again, Tisha B'Av is the wrong term to use for Sunday because Tisha B'Av is just we call it as a day, but it's really Tes B'Av, so it's not, we can't say Sunday is Tisha B'Av if it's not Tisha B'Av, but we're just going to use that term because that's what we're used to. So we're calling it Tisha B'Av, but it's Yud B'Av is the day of this morning, and therefore we do not go ahead, we're not noyig to Asa cutting nails on Erev Tisha B'Av, which is Friday, because Tisha B'Av is really on Sunday, and therefore it's mutter to cut your nails. Now, there is also somewhat of a machlokes about putting on Shabbos clothing. You're not supposed to wear Shabbos clothing in the 9 days for no reason. So therefore, there's a machlokes in the Achrayim if a person could go ahead and put on Shabbos clothing before Chatzos on Friday. The Yankiv Fisher was always, there's an Indian in Halacha, it's not again now, but in Siman Reish Samach Beis by Levish's Big the Shabbos, says that right after you take a shower, you're supposed to put on your Shabbos clothing, which means don't take a shower, put on your weekday clothing, an hour later, put on your Shabbos clothing. It's supposed to be Samach, it's a Mechaber, it's a Ramah, sorry, in the end of Siman Reish Samach Beis, he writes, Yalvish Atzmai Big the Shabbos, Miyad Achash Rochetz Atzmai, V'zeu covered Shabbos. That itself is covered Shabbos. Therefore, so this really, he tells you that therefore you should take a shower right close to Shabbos. Like this, you'll be putting on your Shabbos clothing right away. So now, this is another reason why the Velt is not negative like the Pri Megadim. Because like the Pri Megadim, it'll be against this Ramah, which means the Pri Megadim tells you that this week Friday you should take a shower before Chatzos. The Ramah tells you that after you take a shower, you're supposed to put in your Shabbos clothing. So you're going to be wearing Shabbos clothing in the 9 days, and that's not supposed to be done. So you're going to start wearing Shabbos clothing before Chatzos. So which halacha comes first? Does this Ramah come first? The Meikah Din, you should go ahead and put on your Shabbos clothing right after the shower. So if this Ramah applies, so later be megadim that I'm going ahead and take a shower right before Chatzos, so I come out that I'm wearing Shabbos clothing in the 9 days and I have TISHA B'Av. That should not be done. Therefore, the minig item is not like this Pri Megadim, and we take showers after Chatzos, like a regular week, and then we put on our Shabbos clothing right after the shower. Like this, we're not wearing our Shabbos clothing extra during the 9 days. So too, the gabe polishing the shoes. So there's a Chuvas Ramosha about this. If you're allowed to go ahead and polish your shoes in the 9 days, but like upon him, the polishing that we do normally is not a professional polishing, and therefore, anyways, it'll be mutter. But we're saying this year maybe you don't have the shvua shechalbay. Should you have a shower just before Chatzos? No, we're saying there's no Indian in that at all, because like we're saying, there is, if anything, we're telling you that the Ramah was a little bit, you're going connected to the Ramah in a certain sense, not that that's a chiyuv, but the Ramah tells you that every Shabbos the clothing should be put on right after the shower, and therefore so too that's Negea this week also, and a person should go ahead and make sure to have his clothing, Shabbos clothing, right after the shower, and that be interesting that you should take the shower first. Okay, so Rabbi Leibowitz is asking, where do we find any chumras on Erev TISHA B'Av? I hear Daniel, you're saying that it should be get to the other one kachet. Okay, it should be right before and right after. I don't think we're that exact, and it wouldn't work out. But yeah, okay, if you could do that, then maybe. But 1 second, Rabbi Leibowitz was asking that where do we see any chumras? Now, I don't know what you know about what's negaya those chumras, because I'm assuming you're saying like a Talmud Chacham that I mentioned the learning before after Chatzos, and you're coming and you're asking l'chayra. So that's the only halacha negaya after Chatzos and TISHA B'Av. And you know the Chassam Sofer says the reason why you can't learn after Chatzos is not because it's really dinei avelis after Chatzos and after TISHA B'Av, but just because the person thinks of learning, and we want to stop you 6 hours before the person thinks of learning. You heard a good svara the 6 hours before, and you're going to end up thinking of learning on TISHA B'Av. Therefore, we asked it from Chatzos and on. But other halachas are negayah, but that's not really true, because we'll see later on, if we have to get the time to it, that teal is not supposed to be done of TISHA B'Av also, after Chatzos. So we see that there are halachas, and lav dafka we go to Svav some Seifa, why a person shouldn't be learning. So therefore, there are halachas pertaining Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos, and that's what we're saying. That's why we're claiming if this Friday has the din of Erev Tisha B'Av like a regular year, and there'll be a surim of after Chatzos. Now, like we just said, that Teal is the Rama writes in the end of Taf Kuf Nun Gimel. The Rama says that Asal Tayel Be'erev Tisha B'Av. Zoktiv Shlomo Miller, Zogazunzai. Who adin the Asal Tayel Be'erev Shabbos Zu K'moy Shayev Tisha B'Av. Even though this Tisha B'Av is a nitcha, it's also to go ahead and be metayel. Obviously, it doesn't make. We're not discussing real trips. That shouldn't be done a whole 9 days. But we're talking about even a teal, going ahead and making a leisure walk with your wife. Up on Erev Tisha B'Av, Zakim Shalom Mili, you should not be doing that. But we feel very strongly that l'chayra that should not apply. We asked Chaim Kanievsky, and he agreed with us that since the way we're saying everything till now, that there's no real. It's not really Erev Tisha B'Av. It's more the fact Tisha B'Av is really on Sunday. Therefore, teal, there's no Issa teal on, even though it's Ches La'av, and normally Ches La'av is Erev Tisha B'Av, but this year Ches La'av is not Erev Tisha B'Av. Your Tes La'av is Erev Tisha B'Av. Therefore, it would be mutter to go on teal, and Chaim Kanievsky was masking to us. Therefore, we have a very strong market to make. So too, l'chayra, it should be mutter to learn this year Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos. Normally, we know you're not supposed to learn Erev Tisha B'Av SCHAL, Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos. But this year, like we're saying, there shouldn't be any isurim in that. And that's, we pass on halacha l'maaseh, so the Blitzky, the Chatzadik Lebrach also writes that in a sefer. There are some that argue, but we don't hold that l'chayra. It's enough that like the Mishabur writes, that the Asad B'chlal learning, and to say that now this year Erev Tisha B'Av also learning, so you won't be learning for 3 days, for 2.5 days. That is pretty rough. To say that we should learn Hilchos and Yonei Tisha B'Av, we know that doesn't take for us that long. We fall asleep on that, on those limudim. It's not geschmack, and therefore it's a very stark makom to be makel this year on Friday afternoon. Now, pertaining to the halachas of Shabbos itself, so we spoke about that there are dinim that are negei Shabbos, which means we spoke about Dvarim Shebetzina. Dvarim Shebetzina, we had a machlekes, the Mechaba and the Rama, and we had a tzad, very strong tzad to say that Dvarim Shebetzina is noyig this year Tisha B'Av Shechal B'Shabbos. But let's go with halachas, other halachas. The big machlekes in the Rishonim, if Sudas and Mafsekes, if you can eat basa v'yayin. The Bahag says if Tisha B'Av falls out on Sunday, and which means it really falls out on Shabbos. So he says, and you can go ahead, and now Shabbos is the time of the Sudas and Mafsekes. Zok the Bahag, Oichel basa v'shoyse yayin. There's no problem. The Torah writes, Roish lo lecha basa v'lishtes yayin. That's the Torah. It's halacha l'maisa the Shulchan Paskins and Tafkuf Beis Sif Yud Paskins Imchal Tisha B'Av be'echad b'Shabbos Eshachal b'Shabbos v'nitchalach Shabbos Oichel basa v'shoyse yayin b'sudas hamavsekes. You can eat meat, drink wine on the sudas hamavsekes u'mayla shalchanoi afilik suda shleima be'es manchusai. You can have suda shleima, lavish suda, no problem. Mutter gam ezok the mechaber to eat meat and drink wine on this year's Shalosh Shudas. Now the Magen Avraham in Sifkat Yud Gimel says, "Asel imnoya mimenu afal gavdein chiyav lechel basa b'Shabbos. Mikol makom kiva shenimna mishum avol averi." Mishabur quotes it in Sifkat Chav Gimel. Not only that you should eat it, that you could eat it, but if you're going to be maineh yourself because of avelis, it's awesome. So if a person has a geschmack piece of meat that is ready to eat on Shalosh Shudas, and he says, no, Father, if Tisha B'Av, we're starting Avelis in an hour, so maybe I shouldn't eat it. Zok the Magen Avraham, Mishabura, it's Aveira to do that. Because this year, it's Shabbos is Einig, and you can't take away your Tanugah. Azai Zok the Magen Avraham. Now the Shah is like this. most of us are not knowing to eat meat, shal shudis. So, do you say that, okay, look at go ahead, does the Magen Avraham apply? Which means you're going to stop yourself because of its avelis. Which means, let's say your wife decided to have meat this week, shal shudis, because you have leftovers or whatever it is, you're not eating, you're not having a coffee TISHA B'Av anyways that night. So therefore, why not eat the geschmack piece of meat before the times? So your wife puts it on the table. Now, never have you eaten shalosh shudas, have you put a piece of meat in your mouth. Do we have this issue, the Magen Avraham, that the reason why you don't want to eat it is avelis? Well, no. You could say the reason why I'm not eating it is because shalosh shudas, I'm not holding by eating meat. It's later in the day, I'm not holding by eating meat. So it's pashut that Moshe writes, Sha'af shein Chaim Chelik Dalet Simon Kuf Yud Beis Ois Aleph, and Moshe says, Sha'af shein Noyeg and Lecha B'chol Shabbos Basa B'Suda Shlishis Mutar Lechel after Shabbos at TISHA B'Av. You're allowed to go ahead and eat meat, but the shaila is like we're saying, if you're not ragel, and now you're just not going to eat it, is there an issur this mishabur? And pashtus, it really all depends on your das. If it's in front of you and the reason why you're not eating is al then you go into the aver. But if it's not in front of you, or it's in front of you, and the reason why you're not eating it is because you're just not holding by eating it, doesn't say that you're mechuyev to eat it. No place doesn't say you're mechuyev to eat it. The only time you're mechuyev to eat it is if you're stopping yourself at Tzavelis. But if you're not eating it, time because you're just not in the mood, that's pashut that you're not mechuyev to go ahead and eat it. Now, when Moshe writes in the Tshuva, that same Tshuva, in Chaim Chelik Dalet Simon Kuf Yud Beis, the Gabez Mirs and Shabbos Chazayin. So he says, whatever you sing normally on the Shabbos, Avad it's mutter. And he says, even the Ein Noyeg and Mistaber Shein Lesson, even though you're not things that you're not Noyeg, Mistaber Shein Lesson. And since the mice is to cover Shabbos, you're allowed to go ahead and do it. But if some Zalman says, Zmirs that are kavuim in the Siddur, or that you rogel, that's okay. But other songs should not be done. It's a machlekes. A person should he be noyeg to stop sing songs he's singing there anyways, or he shouldn't. That's this machlekes. Now the Rekeach says that even though it's mutter to eat basa v'yayin, still a person should sit b'davis nefesh. Person should be misbeinen a little bit. And the Magen Avraham quotes this, the Mishabura quotes it. Which means you're not mechuyev to be special happy on Shabbos, especially by the Suda Seven Seconds. And even though you're eating meat, because that's Metzias makes a person oinig. But just to be Simcha v'alma, that they say not to do it. Not only that, Magen Avraham writes that same Magen Avraham, he writes that he quotes from Swami, says, La Yoshav Besudas Chaverim. You shouldn't sit with friends gathering. So, polishing shoes we said was mutter. Yeah. You should not go ahead and we said that a person shouldn't go ahead and so you shouldn't sit with Sudas Chaverim. The Rambam brings the Chai Adam brings it. Why? Because there's no reason why you're sitting with Sudas Chaverim. So the halacha l'maisa, there's the other Ephraim brings some sefer called B'char Shar, that Misha Yagel B'chol Shabbos to sit with the Chaverim with Suda, you're allowed to go ahead on this week also, because if not, it'll be considered a veilus b'fast. So I got already a few phone calls. Are you allowed to invite guests to Shabbos? So the answer to that is the Mishabura brings the Magen Avraham and he brings the B'char Shar, and it's not machriya. So if you don't need to have the guest, then there's no reason, boom, this week to invite the guest. But if it's normal, every week you have a child over, you don't say, okay, this week I'm not having a child over, I want to be noyeg avelis. Chas v'shalom, you don't do avelis b'fasya. So again, if you're going, extending yourself and looking for new guests, that the ketchila should rather not be done on the Shabbos, unless you're doing a mitzvah nasachem. Someone's in shul and you say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not inviting guests this week. That is avera, not just the being goyim more sinas chinam. That's chum bez hamikdash. But if the pshat is that there's no one around and you're looking out to do something to have guests because you want to suit chaverim, over there will tell you to be machmir. But again, the gay adults that have children and the children come every week, you don't have to say this week don't come because it's Erev TISHA B'Av Shechal B'Shabbos. Now we know that even though you want to be machmir till Tzesek Chavim, but eating has to stop by Shkia. That's pashut. Now, how about benching? Does the benching? I'm sorry, I didn't. You want to put that question up again? I missed it. The benching. So it's interesting. Benching that should not make a din should not have to be done before shkia. There's no reason why benching should have to be done before shkia. Benching is not the sudi. You're not eating anything. You have no reason to do it before shkia. But if Londinsky writes that a person should be makbid on doing benching before shkia because you're supposed to wash mayim achreinim. So there's no reason why someone should go ahead and wash his hands after shkia for no reason, for no purpose. So since it could be done before, anyways, you have to stop eating. There's no reason to prolong the suda and just sit around and decide to bench a half hour after shkia. Therefore, he felt that a person should go ahead and bench before shkia. Again, not make radin. If you didn't bench, you can bench after shkia. He's just telling you a zaytik chashash of having it that if you're not going to bench before shkia, then you might end up washing mayim achreinim, which even though it's not the worst thing to wash mayim achreinim after shkia, but still, if you could avoid that, rather wash mayim achreinim before shkia, and after mayim achreinim, anyways, you're not allowed to sit around and shmooze. So therefore, that's where Londinsky comes out with his psak. But again, make adin, you could wash, you could bench after shkia. Now, we said that Bnei Ashkenaz are machmir on the Ramah that says, because Ramah writes, "V'chein noyegin ta'asa tashma shamita." Oh, he sent a link. I don't know what that says over there. Okay, fine. The Bnei Ashkenaz is machmir after shkia. Sorry, the Bnei Ashkenaz is machmir the Avelis Betzina to go ahead and not be noyeg with tashma shamita on Shabbos, this week Shabbos. That's pashut. If Leil Tefillah falls out on Shabbos, Leil Tefillah is Leil Shabbos. Mishabura Pascha's like that, and it's going in many other achreinim that go that yesh machmirim bazeh, but we go ahead and we are yesh lismaich lahaka. And that's what our Peskin Paskin and Moshe, and the Yashav, and Vazna, and the Skras, the all Paskin that this year if Leil Tefillah falls out on Shabbos, Tamazah, you shouldn't do Tashma, it's asa, but if Leil Tefillah falls out, you're allowed to. Now, there's another interesting shaila. We're not going into this by Riches because we only have a few minutes left. But there's a big nice in the Rishayim, again, Shabbos. But the Bam and Aderech is a Chiyuv Oina. That means we know Yaitzel Aderech, if you're leaving that the next day, you have a Chiyuv Oina the night before. How about Bam and Aderech? You just came from the road. So over there, many Achreinim hold that Bam and Aderech, there's also a Chiyuv Oina that night. The following night is also a Chiyuv Oina. So many people that are coming up from the bungalow colony Friday morning, so Friday night, the Bam and Aderech. So there might be a Chiyuv Oina. So it might be like Leil Tefillah that you're Mechuyev, and it should be mutter even this Friday night. The Nishmas Adam says, who adin the Bam and Aderech? Now, he's not talking about over here, but he's talking about Stam. The Bam and Aderech is a Chiyuv Oina. So therefore, the Shatzin says, he brings the Chai Adam, and he says that you have Mokum to be Mekel this year, Bam and Aderech, of Leil Shabbos, because we're saying Be'etzim, there's Mokum, we paskin that Leil Shabbos is not really Tisha B'Av, so therefore there is a Mokum to be Mekel by Bam and Aderech, also, like we're Mekel by Leil Tefillah. So he's Zok to Shatzin, and the Masham goes with that in Das Torah, and the Londinsky quotes that also. So therefore, Bam and Aderech would also have that type of tour. Now, we have 3 minutes left, so still have a lot to discuss here. There's big nicer. I'll just tell you more of the topics, I guess, because we really can't run into all the nakudas. There's a big nicer legabe Issa Negia on Shabbos and Issa Achakas on Shabbos. Now, let's talk about learning Torah. That's more Negia to us on Shabbos. The Leket Yosha says, Tisha B'Av Nitcha Jem Aleph Ein Loimid Kol Shabbos Rak Kilchas Tisha B'Av. The Ramah says, the Ramah Tavkuf and Gimel Sif Beis writes, Nagush Lalumad B'Av Tisha B'Av Mechatzos V'Elech Kiyim Dvarim Hamatar Metes B'Av V'Lechein Im Chal Erev Tisha B'Av B'Shabbos Ein Oimim Pirkei Avos. We are not going to say Pirkei Avos because the Ramah says because it's Erev Tisha B'Av, which means that since Tisha B'Av is on Sunday, so Shabbos is Erev Tisha B'Av. So same every Erev Tisha B'Av, you're not supposed to learn after Chatzos. So too over here, you're not supposed to be learning after Chatzos. But the Lekut Doisha says that the whole day of Tisha B'Av, you're not of Tisha B'Av, which is Shabbos, you should not be learning this year because it's really Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av, you shouldn't be learning Zicha, you shouldn't be learning. What about the Daf? Okay, we're going to get to that in a minute. So we have 3 days, again, we're rushing up here. We have 3 days in the Paiskim. The Me'amel Blin says that you can learn the whole Shabbos. The Magen Avraham is Machmir. The Maril asks from Chatzos and on. So I would say that if you could do the Daf beforehand, then before Chatzos, then okay. We are not Machmir on this Maril. And the Maisa, there is a very stark mokum to be Mekel. If Shlomo was Mekel, Yaakov Fisher said he himself learned. So especially the Daf that you're not going to be learning on Tisha B'Av, you're pushing it over to Matzah Tisha B'Av, which is late, and you're not going to have the time. If your Daf is a time of Kavua, of after Chatzos, afternoon, then it's mutter to go ahead and do that because it's Shabbos, and the way we're saying in Shabbos, it's completely Oiker and Gansen, the day of Tisha B'Av, and therefore you'll be allowed to. I just want to end off. There's a lot of halachas I'm sorry that we missed. Very negay Legabe Til on Shabbos and Legabe taking pills on Shabbos for much of Shabbos. If you're taking an easy fast, if you're allowed to do it on Shabbos, and Legabe. Oh boy, I see we can speak for another 2 hours over here. Very negay Legalachas Legabe Havdalah. This year, if your wife is not fasting, because many wives should not be fasting this year, which we don't have time to go into. So, when should they make Havdalah and who should make Havdalah for them? Reb Shlomo, I'm sorry that you didn't have time, and I really have to run. I'm running to say a share. I just want to end off with one Nakuda. Interesting, Claire, that was Negea to the beginning. What we spoke is that Mitzvah Mashiach is going to be this year. So when are we knowing the Simcha? When is the Simcha going to be lost love and Tisha B'Av SCHAL b'Shabbos? We know that it's going to be a Yontif. So which day is going to be a Yontif? Yom Tes or Yom Yud? Is Shabbos going to be a Yontif? And this depends on the Claire. There's some Sefer in Chumash about this, but this depends on the Claire, which we started off. The Bekitza. If the Pshat is that it was pushed off to Sunday, so then we're going to have to wait for Mashiach. The Yom HaMoed is going to be Sunday. But if it's really Tisha B'Av is on Shabbos, and it was just Tashlumin on Sunday, then we'll be Zeicha that Mashiach should come. The Yom HaMoed is going to be, the Sasim V'Simcha is going to be on Shabbos. We should all be Zeicha. Sorry again for rushing it up, but we should all be Zeicha.
One question about for the Rav. How are you wearing the shoes? I'm sure this is a big issue. Didn't get the shoes.
Yeah, the shoes should be worn till Tzeis. Do not take off your shoes. If you start walking around with shoes, fine. But if you're putting on your Tisha B'Av shoes, that's Chil Shabbos. That should not be done. Shoes should be kept on. So too, sitting on a regular chair. All the dinim besides eating should be regular till from after Shkia. Washing hands, we said Ma'amachenu. If it's Shloi L'Tzayach, that should not be done. But dinim.
Are you allowed to walk to shul to daven Ma'ariv with your Tisha B'Av shoes? Or you have to take them to shul? And what if you have problems with carrying and all that?
Right, that's okay. That's a whole nother shmooze. That should not be done. So you should wait till Mechal HaPach is 50. You should not be wearing Tisha B'Av shoes before 50. Mechal HaPach is 48, whatever, after minutes after Shkia, because it still has Dinei Shabbos. So too, sitting on a chair, like we're saying, any Dinei, you should not be Mezalzel and Einik Shabbos. Okay, Reb Shlomo, if we have another day, maybe we can bring it up. But Akapanim, Havdalah is very, very negaya, and also Husha fast is also very negaya. Many people listening over here are not mechayiv to fast, even though you think mechayiv. Not everyone is mechayiv to fast this year. Kaman has a din like a regular fast, but I'm not going to be married on that because it takes time to discuss that. Okay. The Baruch Shem should be zeicha. We shouldn't be mechayiv to fast, and we should have Mashiach that kind of mehevi. Amen.
Amen. Okay, Rabbi Say, I'm just going to do a quick chazar on a couple of the shouts that the Rav mentioned.